just let us know. But you're definitely happy to give you all of these materials, and you can do with them what you want.
Thank you.
So you're very welcome. We're going to talk today. I'll do a quick overview of the competition and how it's going to work. The main time that we have together today is going to be focused on strategies and tips for how you can create an effective elevator pitch. And then we'll wrap up by talking about the rules of the competition as well as the judging criteria. Right. So as far as the competition, university students, high school students, and middle school students can all compete. We have different tracks for each. So you don't have middle school competing with college and high school competing with middle school and so on. So we're going to have lots of ideas from lots and lots of different folks. What the fast pitch is essentially a 90-second pitch of your product or service. That is what you will be putting together. And that's really all you need to do to be eligible to compete. And as far as why you should participate, this is putting together an elevator pitch is really good practice. In this case, you're going to do it for a product or service, so it has an entrepreneurial spin. But the idea of an elevator pitch has left the confines of entrepreneurship. And there's, for example, people who are saying you should have an elevator pitch when you go look for a job. So when you go to a recruiter, you should have a concise 60-second or 90-second kind of, here's who I am, here's why you should take me seriously, and you know, maybe talk to me more, maybe look at my resume, those types of things. So anytime you want to present your idea to somebody, if you can present it in a concise and effective way, that gives you and your ideas a lot more credibility. So it's good practice for all of that. And then, of course, we have some scholarships. So winners will also be eligible and receive some scholarships. And I don't know, Chad, if you have any updates on what that looks like for which track and so on, or is that still something we're working on?
Yeah, right now we have the 2020 numbers posted, and it should be very close, maybe more than the 2020.
Do you happen to know what those were? If you want to. I
don't.
Okay, that's okay. No worries. There's money involved. That's, I guess, the most important thing. I'm using the word fast pitch, but essentially what we're asking you to do is create an elevator pitch. Fast pitch is kind of our branding on that term. And an elevator pitch is a very, very, very brief version of your business plan, typically 60 to 90 seconds, which translates to 100 to 150 words. And the reason elevator pitches became popular is because people are busy and you're competing for their attention, right? If you see someone, I guess if we're going to be cliche, you see someone in the elevator, and before they get out of the elevator, can you get their attention enough for them to say something like, oh, here's my business card, tell me more. Send me an email and maybe we'll set up an appointment, or just any sort of follow-up. Can you do that in a concise way? That's what the elevator pitch is trying to get you to do. The goals of an elevator pitch are typically threefold, right? You want to get the listener's attention. You want to convince them that there's mutual benefit here. So if, again, we're talking about the traditional elevator pitches, you have a product or service you want to create and you need maybe an investor, maybe a co-founder, maybe a partner, maybe an advisor and things like that. You have to convince them that there's something in it for them too. If they're going to give you their time, their money, they're going to leave their job at this company, come work for you. You have to convince them that there's benefit, not just for you by having them do that, but for them as well. And then the final goal is to set the stage for follow-up. So because in 60 to 90 seconds, no one's going to write you $1 million check, right? But what they will do is, if you're successful, is say, I want to know more. I don't know, maybe they don't have anything right now. Let's just talk for 15 minutes right now and you tell me more, or maybe email me and we'll set up a time, those types of things. Or if you have a business plan, maybe you can send that to me. Any type of follow-up like that. Now, when we talk about the fast pitch, because you are presenting and you're going to upload essentially a video, you're not doing it in front of a person, we're going to take that goal out. And the big caveat being just for this competition, when you do pitches in real life, you absolutely want to pretty much end with a follow-up, a request for follow-up. But in a pitch where you're recording a video, it just sounds kind of weird because you're not talking to anybody. And if you end your pitch with something like, "Oh, would you like to meet with me?" It feels weird to say probably, and it feels weird to hear it. So we're going to take that part out and have you, in a few minutes, I'll tell you how you can summarize your pitch in a way that works better for the format that we have. But I just wanted you to know what a pitch is supposed to look like, and then we'll talk about how we're modifying it for this competition. Does anyone have any questions so far? Okay. Your pitch in 60 to 90 seconds must answer the following questions. You need to tell them what problem you're solving, a little bit about your solution, who your customer is, how large that market is, how your solution is different. Is it better than what's out there? Is it faster? Is it cheaper? Maybe you get 2 of those 3. Very rarely do you get all 3, but what is it? Who is on your team? And if this is a venture that is actually in progress, what is the current status? Have you built a prototype? Have you launched the first version? Do you have testers? Those types of things. Okay. So let me talk about these in a little more detail, right? So what problem are you solving? If you're not solving a problem, that's a problem, right? Entrepreneurs don't build things, entrepreneurs solve problems. So that is probably the most important thing you're going to say here. You want to follow that up with by briefly describing what it is that you're making. You just don't have time to go into a lot of detail. So just a high level overview. You want to let them know who you're solving these problems for, right? So who's your customer? What industry are they part of? How large of a market is it? You want to specify who your main competition is likely to be and how you are better than them. What's your competitive advantage there? You want to let them know who's on your team, because oftentimes it's the execution of your idea that's going to matter. And that execution is heavily based on who's on your team. So if you have a very strong team of people that have done this type of work before, you definitely want to highlight that. And then finally, if your venture is something that's in progress, you can highlight the current status. And that way you're conveying that it's more than just an idea, that it's something you've spent time working on it. You have some maybe evidence from the real world as to how people are resonating with this solution that you built. And that's a great source of traction that can translate into interest from other people. To help you figure this out, I've shared with you in the handout and in this presentation a few templates that you can use, not as scripts for your video, but as ways you can kind of brainstorm answers to these questions. So I'm going to run through those now. The first one is something that's known as a positioning statement. And essentially, again, you're filling in the blanks. So for blank, who blank, our solution is blank. That provides blank. Unlike blank, our solution does this, right? So you've talked about your solution, you've talked about why it's unique, you've talked about who the customers are, you've talked about who your competitors are, and so on. So for example, a couple of years ago, I had a team that was working on an app for international travelers, specifically first-time international travelers, because they realized this group of people, they have a real challenge figuring out all that's needed, even as simple things like, what kind of visa do I need? I'm going to Italy and I'm a citizen of this country. What kind of visa do I need? And I think some of you probably know this. If you go and Google that information, there's a pretty good chance you're going to end up on some scammy website that's going to claim that they can get you a visa. And instead, they're going to steal your credit, right? So when these students talked to this group, they found that there was just a lot of information all over the place and they never knew what was accurate and what wasn't. So their idea was to come up with an app that gave them all the information they would need so they could get to their destination safely. What kind of visa do you need? What's the weather like? What should you pack? What are your airline kind of baggage restrictions, and so on and so on. So I'm going to give you what their pitch would look like. And this template was an inspiration to that. Okay, so here we go. For first-time travelers who are struggling to figure out all that they need to do before they get on the plane, our solution is an app that provides you with accurate information on everything you need to know, such as what shots you need, if a visa is required, what clothes you should pack, what phrases you should know in the local language, how many bags your airlines allows, and so on. Unlike most travel websites, which don't offer information customized to you, or Google searches, which try to send you to scammy websites, our app offers accurate information to make sure you get to your destination safely. So hopefully you saw how we're essentially using this template, but modifying it to create a script that we're comfortable articulating. Another template is something called a Pixar pitch. And if you think about Pixar movies, the one coming to mind right now for me is Frozen, right? They follow this template. So once upon a time, you have this character, right? Her name is Elsa, and she can turn things to ice. And every day she creates this winter wonderland for her sister. And then one day she accidentally hits her sister with a blast of ice. And because of that, she becomes really scared. She's going to hurt her sister and hides from her. Because of that, when her parents died and she became queen, she had no idea how to control her powers. And she ran away from the kingdom. And because of that, her sister began to search for her, until finally they realized it was their bond as sisters that was going to help her control her magic. And now they're inseparable, right? So this is obviously from a completely different industry, right? We're not talking about creating a new product or service. This is something they use to create their movies, but you can translate this. And let me give you an example of how that could be done. In Africa, village water wells are vital to the sustainability of the rural population. In one community, we counted over 300 people who relied on a single well as their only source of daily drinking water, often walking from miles to obtain it. Last year, the well was found to be contaminated by waterborne parasites. Our company, Hydrolyzer, was one of the 3 companies contracted by the regional government to remedy this situation. We were selected to install our new water purification system, the Max Lite, primarily due to the speed with which we could deploy it, because we could do that in less than 36 hours, and its cost, less than 60% of the competition. And today, the people of this village can safely drink from their well again. They didn't say once upon a time, one day because of that, because of this, until finally, but you can see, okay, we're illustrating a problem. We have this community that they rely on this well. The well becomes contaminated. And because of that, these things happen. Because of that, we come in, and until finally, when we come in, we clean the water, and now they can drink from the water again, right? Kind of using that Pixar pitch framework and modifying it to tell a story about what the world was like before they came along, and now how much better it is because they came along. The third and final brainstorming pitch I'm gonna share with you is something I call the almost real pitch, because this does become closer to how you hear an elevator pitch sometimes. So have you ever blank, right? Have you ever been in the situation? Our company makes this product for this customer so that they can benefit in these ways. Unlike the competition, our solution does this. So let me give you an example of how an elevator pitch using this template might look like. Our company, OAT Solutions, makes the oat pot, a pot that allows you to make cold oatmeal with all the toppings you like, fruit, nuts, and so on, for working professionals so that they can start their day off right with a healthy and nutritious breakfast. Unlike traditional solutions, which simply involve putting all the ingredients in a single serving jar and letting it sit in your fridge overnight, our solution has separate compartments to separate things that can affect the flavor of your oatmeal, like the fruit, from the things that are best not brought into contact with the oatmeal until it's ready to be eaten, like the nuts. Questions about any of these brainstorming templates or anything else? Okay. 60 to 90 seconds can go fast. So here's a recommendation of how you want to split up that time. You want to spend 20 to 30 seconds talking about the problem you're solving, because that's the most important. That's if you don't have the audience member convinced that this is a problem that needs to be solved, nothing else you say matters. So you want to spend a good amount of time on that and make sure you convey that clearly. You also want to spend a good amount of time on your solution, how it's better, who your customer is, how large of a market that is. So probably 20 to 30 seconds there. Spend about 10 seconds on your team, and then 10 to 20 seconds on your current status and or next steps. So if you don't have something going right now, you can let them know this is what we want to do next. We're in the process of building our first prototype. We're in the process of launching our beta and things like that. You can say that. You don't have to feel bad that you're not already in beta, for example. So next, let me share with you 4 pitches that do this fairly well. And I'll read the pitch to you, and then we'll talk a little bit about what you took out of it in terms of what problem are they solving, who's their customer and solution, and so on. So here's the first one. Everyone has a story. Few people, however, have the passion, patience, and most importantly, the time to write those stories. At GhostPub, a boutique ghostwriting firm, we want to focus on writing your stories for you, with services ranging from ghostwriting to book content development and even writing resources. GhostPub can turn your stories into page-turning reality. Whether you're someone who wants to write a book about your business or someone who has a great life story, maybe someone who just has a dynamic idea for a book, GhostPub can write your stories while you wait. And it's simple. Visit our website, you tell us all about what you want to write, and we'll pair you with an experienced author. Think of us as your personal ghostwriters. Remember, the world is waiting to hear your story. Let GhostPub end that wait. So tell me, what is the problem they're solving?
The time that people don't have the time to write their stories.
The time and maybe even kind of the expertise, right? Writing in your journal or writing an essay is one thing, but writing a 200-page book about your life is a whole other thing, right? So they're saying basically you can outsource that to one of us. And that process, I guess, is not as simple as a traditional outsourcing process because the person who's going to write your story knows nothing about you. So it has to be this relationship, right? So if someone's going to write a story, Anastasia, about your life so far, they can't do that unless they spend a lot of time getting to know you, right? So that's kind of what they're offering. And who might be the customer for this?
Maybe people who work for some company, like writing advertisements, like really good advertisements, like stories,
Okay.
but they don't have time to write stories for themselves.
Okay. And do you think that people like that are more likely to want to write their own story? Yeah, it could be, I just don't have the time. And I think they say a little bit of that in their pitch. They say, whether you're someone who wants to write a book about your business, so maybe someone who has done something that they really want to document and highlight and share with others. Someone who has a great life story. So, right, maybe you had a lot of challenges along the way, or I don't know, you grew up in a family where you got to travel to a different country every year and move around, and you want to talk about that experience and so on, right? They're giving examples of who their customers might be. Broadly conveying a message that we want to convey is that we have a large market here. Right? You, Anastasia, you talked about like these ad execs that may want to, they just don't have time. That's our market, but that's not our only market. There's so many more people that would also want to use a service like this, right? That's an important message to convey because it shows that your business has a lot of potential if it appeals to a lot of different people.
Also,
Another example here.
oh,
go ahead.
Sorry.
No, don't be
I
sorry.
noticed about the first elevator pitch, they didn't include their, I don't know if you're supposed to, but they didn't really include their competition, like unlike something.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So these, I should have said this up front, these were actual pitches that I found, right? These are not me kind of making a textbook example of what a pitch should look like and kind of inventing a company. This was an actual pitch. When I did my work putting together this presentation and I listened to a bunch of elevator pitches from different competitions, this was one that I found. And you're absolutely right. They didn't talk about what the alternative is. Right? It's kind of implicit. It almost sounds like the alternative is to write it yourself. But I wonder if there are other services that do something similar too. Let me share with you a different kind of pitch. This one is a little more personal, as you can see, and let me read it to you and then we'll talk about it. Hi, I'm Jordan. I've been an athlete since I was 3 years old. I never imagined that during my junior softball season at this university, I would pass out running a hill. After months of doctor's appointments, getting my blood drawn, and heart tests, I finally found out that I was diagnosed with iron deficiency anemia. Iron deficiency anemia is a top nutritional disorder in the world with no cure. 80% of the world suffers from iron deficiency anemia, and 20% of those are athletes. My company, Fairtest, has created a product that is portable and is like a glucose meter. With a small sample of blood, you can test your iron levels to see if they're low or high and work from there. Athletes from the ages of 17 to 24 are at extremely high risk as iron is lost through sweat, skin, and urine. Fairtest is a product that can help athletes continue to play the sports they enjoy so much. So Anastasia, I'll start with you because you've been so vocal. What do you think of this pitch? Do you think it hits the criteria better than the other one we just talked about?
I didn't notice they include the alternative too, but I think that they state the problem really well. Yeah.
And it was personal, right? You have someone up there saying, I dealt with this. I was the one that passed out. And that's what inspired me to create this company, right? That's there's kind of an emotional impact to that not everybody's going to be able to deliver if they don't come at it with that same personal experience. But it does hit you when you see that, okay, they dealt with this, they suffered, it inspired them to start this company, and they realized there are lots of other people they can help, including themselves. This third pitch, this is actually from our fast pitch competition some years ago. And this was the company that won it. So let me read this pitch to you and then we'll talk about it briefly. When your shoes wear out, you get some new ones. But when your body's joints wear out, no drug treatments can bring them back. So what can you do? Stem cells can regenerate your joints. I'm John Chi, and at Sonova Life Sciences, our mobile stem cell processing cart makes it possible for the 27 million Americans who are spending $185 billion a year on arthritis treatments to get treated with their own stem cells by their own doctors. Doctors with Sonova can offer stem cells services without taking on any additional overhead, costs, or staff. We bill patients directly and then revenue share with the doctors. Our go-to-market strategy covers customer education, thought leaders, direct sales, and lobbying insurers. Our partners are a medical doctor and a CA healthcare administrator. 700,000 gets us to market, and we're projecting $35 million in sales, 10 million in profits, and a 10-time return on your investment by year 5. What do you think of this pitch? It's very different than the other two in terms of how it's structured, in terms of the information, right?
Yeah, it is. Well, they clearly state the problem. There are alternatives that, people spend 185 billion a year on I don't know how to say it, sorry.
Arthritis.
Treatments. Yeah, and they offer a solution, a better one, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's a big market, right? $185 billion, 27 million. They're throwing a lot of numbers out there to make that message very clear. Something else they talk about is how much they want and what their sales projections are. Right? And I think they can do that because they were much further along in their development. Most of the elevator pitches will probably not be able to do that. The other thing they talk about that nobody else in the examples previous has talked about is their team. They talk about they have a doctor on their team and a healthcare administrator. So if they're working in doctor's offices, it's nice to know what that is like and nice to know people who have kind of an in that space. They're also billing patients and dealing with that whole side of healthcare, and they have someone on their team that can understand that presumably. So that sentence, I think, gives them a lot of credibility as well to say that we have a well-rounded team. We're going after a big a big market with a product that's gonna change it. We have a good team in place, and we just need some help getting there in terms of cash. Other comments or thoughts about this pitch?
I think it's really well structured, and I think that it's a little better structured than the other two.
And maybe that's why it won. We'll do one more example. This one actually comes from the MIT elevator pitch competition. And this was a winning pitch from there. I modified it just slightly, but let me read it to you and then we'll talk about that. The most widely manufactured material on the planet is concrete. On average, each person uses more than 3 tons of concrete a year. Unfortunately, concrete manufacturing processes contribute to more than 10% of the CO2 emissions worldwide. However, we've been able to develop a concrete that not only cuts the CO2 emissions by half, but also it is 5 times stronger than normal concrete. Our design is unique because we have discovered how to change the very nanostructure of concrete. This approach is environmentally friendly and at the same time reduces the cost of concrete manufacturing by 40%. The US market for concrete is $100 billion a year. We're a team of 5 researchers, including 3 superstar professors at MIT, that are looking to make concrete kinder to the planet. All right, hit me, Anastasia. What do you think?
Well, it discusses the problem. It includes a lot of numbers like the other one.
Yeah. Yeah.
It discusses the team, like how it's really good.
Yeah, you can kind of tell why this one won too, right? It's a big market, right? $100 billion a year just in the US. They're talking about how much their product is better, right? It's better for the environment, it's stronger, it cuts the cost of manufacturing. So it's like, it's actually one of those rare products that can hit all of the things I talked about. It's better for the environment, it's cheaper also, right? And it's stronger, right? So you're getting something that's better for the planet, better for the people using it. So the construction folks get a better product and it's cheaper, right? It's like win, win, win. And you have a solid team to put it together. Right? This is, again, I think when you break it down that way, it's pretty clear why it won.
Yeah, it actually covers all 3. It's better, faster, and cheaper.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. So now that I've shared with you some examples of successful pitches, I want to give you some tips that you can use to create your own. The first is you want to focus on an idea that can meaningfully improve the lives of a large number of people. So we saw that in the example of the stem cell cart. We saw that in the example of the concrete, for sure. But even the other ones that we saw, the one about the iron deficiency anemia, I mean, that's talking about college athletes, which is, again, a big market of people whose lives you can improve. The second tip I have for you is you want to start your pitch with a hook, because even though it's 60 to 90 seconds of their time, which doesn't seem like a lot, if the first 5 or 10 seconds don't get them interested, the other 70, 80 seconds are not going to matter either, right? So start your pitch with a hook, and there's a few ways you can do that. You could start with a question. So I'm going to use the concrete example here. So you could say something like, did you know that the emissions produced when making concrete contribute to 10% of the world's CO2 emissions, right? Kind of this fact that might just kind of wake them up and get them to pay attention to you and say, oh, wow, I had no idea. It could be a provocative statement. You could say something like, the concrete driveway in front of our houses is one of the biggest contributors to global warming, right? Which is, again, something you're like, but the driveway is just sitting there. It's not doing anything. What do you mean it's contributing? Right? So again, you've gotten their attention. And you could start with a surprising fact. You could say, on average, each person uses more than 3 tons of concrete a year, making it the most widely manufactured material on the planet. And now you're getting their attention because they're like, what do I do with 3 tons of concrete? Nothing. How do I use that? Or you can do a statement that illustrates a problem by saying something like, the 3 tons of concrete each person uses on average per year is contributing 10% to the world's CO2 emissions. Right? Any of those are possibilities for how you can create that hook. By all means, you're not limited to this. These are just some common strategies that you can use to figure out what your hook should look like. Third tip I have for you is to close your pitch with a statement summarizing the impact of your solution. Now, I mentioned earlier, typically at the end of your pitch, you're going to ask for something. If this was a real pitch, you were in front of an investor, or someone who could be a partner and things like that. You would ask for something. Well, for the purposes of this competition, it's probably best if you have a summary statement. So, for example, the concrete pitch, they might end by saying something like, "We are making concrete kinder to the planet." The iron deficiency anemia pitch may conclude by saying something like, "Our product allows athletes to keep playing the sports that they love." The ghost pub pitch that we heard could wrap up by saying something like, "We're making it possible for the world to hear your story." Or the stem cell card, they might say something like, "With Sonova, adults with joint problems can once again live life to the fullest." Just something to wrap up what it is you're saying and close out the recording. The fourth tip I have is to use these templates to get your creative juices flowing. Once again, I'm calling them templates, not scripts, right? Don't just fill in the blanks and read it. It's going to come off not so professional. It won't sound like it's you. It's going to sound a little bit robotic. All of the energy and enthusiasm you have for what you're creating is not going to come through. But you can gather all the information, and then you can move it around and clean it up and change the words till it sounds more natural, till it sounds like you can express that with confidence and passion. And all of that is going to come through on the pitch that you record. I'm going to pause again and see if anybody has any questions.
Dr. T, there's one thing I've noticed when I'm practicing on competitions like this. There's a initial period where the practice starts going good and you start memorizing it and it starts becoming natural. And then I'll hit a dip, and for some reason, my presentation, my practice will get worse. And what I find is you keep practicing through that dip, and when you come back out on the other side, my presentation is much better than when I went. If I had just stopped at that initial period where it was getting good and getting comfortable, I was only partially there. When I work through that dip, I come out with a much better presentation, a much more natural sounding presentation when I get to the other side.
That's great advice. Thank you. That's good. That's good to know. Let's talk about the judging criteria. So when the judges watch your pitch, they're going to be looking at the content, and they're also going to be looking at how you communicate it. So content, a lot of this we've touched on already. This shouldn't be new information for you. They want to know your market. They want to know what your product is, why it's special, what's your value proposition, is what you're doing compelling, can it scale? And they also are going to assess how you're presenting all of that information. How are you articulating it? Do you present with energy and confidence? Do you make eye contact? Is your story cohesive? And so on.
Dr. T, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Randy.
So I already produce YouTube content, and generally when I'm talking, I like to set up a tripod on my desk and show diagrams, show my hand motions and writing. Do you think it would be necessary to show your face through your presentation, or is there would it also be okay to do what I described?
I believe you have to show your face.
Right.
If I'm wrong, Chad. Yeah.
Yeah. That's it sounds the way you're describing it, Randy. You may be in a gray zone there because we do allow demonstrations. So if you have like a mock-up of your product, but there's not supposed to be any kind of PowerPoint or things like that. And it almost sounds so. Can you talk a little bit more about your product?
Well, right now I have one product in mind, and luckily I'm in an entrepreneurship class that lets me practice it. The professors gave us like a good outline for us to create a pitch as well, which we're working on for that class. And the product that I'm thinking of is like reusable food and drink storage containers for you to use in your fridge, because I think it's, well, space is money, and like having like let's say you put your leftovers of dinner in a large Tupperware, and as you use it, you can like compress the Tupperware to make it shorter and shorter and shorter to increase the space in your fridge and reduce the space of the container without having to transfer it to a different container. I don't have a prototype, and I don't think I could get one made because the design I have in my head would require like a decent engineer, and I couldn't do that right now. That's why I was hoping to use a diagram, because that's what the professor requested, but I guess it wouldn't work here, and that's okay.
Yeah, it sounds like a great idea.
I mean, you might want to show the diagram, but it is a pitch, so it's not a teaser video. It's not a promo for your product.
Right.
Right. So that's something, Randy, you want to keep in mind. So that's why I think it's going to be very important that you be on camera.
But I do, even if you could just do an MVP, I don't know if you've gotten to that point in class yet where they've talked about MVP products, but just something, I was going to mention this later, but one thing I noticed with the finalists last year, people who had a prop of some sort, it wasn't everyone who was a finalist, but most of the finalists did have some sort of prop. And I've noticed that in previous years also while we were doing live competitions. If you have a prop in your hand, your chances of making the finals are much higher. So if you can, you don't have to, develop the real product, but if you can just say, hey, here's my guacamole and here's what it looks like, if I let air into the container and here's what it looks like if I don't, that's pretty powerful too.
What if, Chad, tell me if we're violating any rules here. What if Randy said something like one of his props was a container and kind of a, I don't know, maybe a glass one or Pyrex or whatever, and you kind of just show how big it is and show how much space it takes. And then another one is kind of, this is what ours would look like. When you're not using it, this is how much smaller it would be. Yeah, and that would be kind of the prop.
Yeah.
Would that work?
I think that would be great for your presentation.
Oh,
Randy,
I see.
Is that
okay.
helpful?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Okay. I moved the slide to the rules just because since Randy's question kind of got us there. So maybe I'll talk about this and then we'll go back to the couple that I skipped. So as far as the competition, your pitch cannot be longer than 90 seconds. You are not allowed to use slides or poster boards, CGI, music, or other editing, right? It is your pitch. It is your voice. It is the things you're saying that matters, not the fancy video editing that you could do that would make it more of a commercial and less of a pitch. Handheld and or variable props are acceptable. If you have prototypes and you want to show that, that's also acceptable. Teams, but only up to 2 members are permitted to participate in the video. And then finally, the most obvious rule here is you must be currently enrolled in either middle school, high school, or college or university to participate in the competition. I should have probably talked about this, Chad, when you shared your tip about the practice, right? So whatever you do, you want to make sure you're speaking in a straightforward manner. Sometimes you have people who are experts in a field of technology and they get into all the jargon, but the audience member, the person watching the video, is probably not going to know any of that. I think back to the concrete pitch. They didn't go into any detail. They just said very vaguely, we're changing the very nanostructure of concrete. That's it. And that, to any of us who have no idea how concrete is done, all we know is like, okay, that sounds like a big deal. That's it. We don't need to know any more than that. So make sure you're speaking in a straightforward manner. Make sure you're not speaking in a way that you're assuming the person who's listening is also part of your field and understands all the jargon and all the nuances of that field. And then finally, you don't want to memorize your pitch, you want to internalize it. So when you practice a lot, you get more comfortable saying what you want to say in a way that sounds natural. So the way I think about internalizing versus memorizing is this. Memorizing is, I have a script, and every time I say those exact words. Internalizing is, I know that script, and when I say it, it comes out naturally, and some of those words might change a little bit, but the message still gets across. All of the things I want to say, the problem I'm solving, my solution, how big my market is, all of that's still getting across, but it's not, maybe 80 or 90% of the words that were in my script, but not 100%. And the benefit of internalizing is you just sound a lot more natural. It sounds more like you. Some other kind of important information about the competition. Most importantly, your pitches need to be uploaded by 9 a.m. on October 2nd. The judges will look at it by 5 p.m. on October 8th. They will notify the finalists, and the finalists will present at a live event on October 16th at the TSU Pavilion. This is an event that's, I believe, Chad, open to everybody. So if you don't make it to the finals, come, show up, see who did, and you can invite friends and family to it as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. And then
One
there's some
question.
links here. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Like, the picture you just uploaded on YouTube, or like or are you supposed to upload it by like some link specific that, I don't know, will lead you somewhere specific
Yeah,
on
we'll
YouTube?
send the uploading specifics in this email coming up soon.
Okay.
So I believe, Chad, help me out here. I believe they're going to make the video, put it on YouTube, and then they'll upload the link to us.
Yeah,
So it can be a private video as long as we can view the link.
Right, that's it.
It doesn't have to be on your YouTube channel for everyone else to see.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. And then finally, there's a couple of links here, which I think all of you already have in terms of registering, in terms of learning more about the pitch. And Chad, would you be able to quickly drop those into chat so they have them in a way that they can click? So I think that more or less wraps us up. I'm going to open it up to see if anyone has any more questions, but I wanted to let you know that if you need help with your pitch, if you have questions, if you want to practice it, if you want to get some feedback, let us know. It might actually be best to let Chad know, because he can kind of funnel those requests to make sure that you get hooked up with a faculty member quickly who can turn it around. If I ask all of you to email me, then some of you will get a response faster than others, but he knows how many students are working with each faculty member and can kind of split up the work that way. So maybe that would be the best. Chad, if you don't mind putting your email in the chat as well, so they know who to reach out to, and just let him know I have some questions, or I have a script I'd like to get some feedback on. Can you connect me with somebody in the entrepreneurship program that can help me? And he's lightning fast with emails, so he'll hook you up very quickly.
Some days. Yeah, we'd love the earlier you can get material submitted and ask for feedback. I'm not a judge on the competition, so I'm glad to, I can give you feedback, and it won't be biasing the final outcome at all. So be more than happy to do that.
Yeah. So that wraps us up, but I do want to open it up to see if anybody has any additional questions.
I have one more question.
Go ahead, Randy.
When editing, is it okay? Oh, like, can the video even be edited, or should it just be raw? Like, can I clip it and put it together like more efficiently, or do I just have to let it run how it would naturally run without cutting it and edits and all that?
So the rules say no editing is allowed. So it should be a continuous 60 to 90 second video.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Give you a little more insight on the judging, because in future years, not last year, but prior to that, we used to have a large room, and there was dozens of judges, and each person would give their pitch live as many times as they could in an hour. And so now that we're on video, it's a little bit different. And to keep things as fair as possible, we want each video submission to be reviewed as many times as possible. So we have a large number of volunteer judges, and we're asking them to each do a minimum number of reviews, but they have a week to do it. So if they want to do more than the minimum, there's more than enough time, and then that will give each competitor multiple additional opportunities to get a review and a score on their submission, which is important because I think Anastasia's questions were great. There's these there's no right or wrong on a pitch. It's very subjective. There's some good procedures you can follow, but each judge has certain different things that they think is important when they're reviewing. So your hurdle is you have first a large, when you enter the preliminaries, there's a large number of very random people, random experience who are going to be reviewing your presentations. And that's in the interest of fairness and getting as many different views on it as possible. So again, there's no right or wrong. I think just practice as much as possible. Follow is, like Dr. T said, he gave you templates, but not scripts. Use them to really understand your product and how it translates value to other people. Then when you get to the finals, now you've got much more focused, experienced group of investors and bankers who are going to be reviewing. So you may, think about that when you're doing the finals, but before the finals, keep it very, like Dr. T said, don't do too much technical jargon. Keep it very much, how would you explain it to a family member, somebody who's not an experienced investor, and that will be the best way to get the most accurate feedback on your presentations.
Thanks. Yeah. Also, I'm not sure. I can't see the link to the slides in the chat. I'm not sure if you already sent it. Sorry.
I'll send those at email.
Oh, okay.
I just put the PDF in the chat, but I think Chad's going to follow up with the same thing again.
Yeah.
I can't see the PDF in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, maybe then I can try it again if you'd like. I can try to dump it one more time, but if that doesn't work, maybe when you get the email from Chad, it'll have it.
I'm fine with the email.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Zoom's kind of weird that way. Like sometimes I can share documents. Sometimes it doesn't even let me share them, and I don't know why. It just blocks me from putting files up there, which can be really annoying when you need.
So I see it in the chat. So I think there may be something on Anastasia's side that's blocking it.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll get those out today.
Okay. Isabel, you texted me that you had a question.
Yeah, my question is about if my video is public or not. Like, does that count as prior art against like a patent if I want to apply for a patent like later on? And in addition, like I would want my product to be like open source. So I don't know how that affects the patent. Yeah.
You ask good questions. I don't.
You were on the call with Justin the other day, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. My guess is it would be prior art if you make it public. So don't do that.
Okay.
And you can email Justin also. And if once you've let's say you've published it and put it on private, and you could say, hey, here's where I'm at. Or actually before you publish it, ask them, this is what I'm planning on doing. How will that affect my patentability? I'd be glad to help you.
I've also heard, so I'm also not an attorney, but I've heard when people have asked this question, one of the things they've said is, well, you can file pretty easily for a provisional patent. And if you've done that, then any video that you put out there is not going to be a concern anymore, because you've already told them, I intend to file for a patent. That's what matters. And I don't think that is a long, lengthy form. I don't think it costs a lot of money to do. So if you're really serious about this, that's something to keep in mind. I guess the other thing that I don't have an answer to, but I guess I have some thoughts on, is if you're doing something that's going to be open source, that presumably says everyone has access to it. So why would you want to patent something that's open source? Or can you even do that? It almost seems like they're doing opposite things. A patent is protecting you from others, but an open source is saying, I don't want your protection, you can have it.
Well, I want it to be like available for everyone sort of equally. So I don't want other people to like manufacturers, I guess, to overly make a profit on it, because I want people to have access to it. Does that kind of make sense?
So but I guess, can you do that if you're open source? Can you, if
Yeah.
you're open source, I don't know if you can control what somebody else does with it. So I don't know, that's probably a good question for an attorney as well, because that's well outside my domain of knowledge. But those are, as you were talking, those were questions that were coming to my mind. Like, I feel like sometimes it's a contradiction, like patents and open source almost seem like opposite ends of.
So I want to
the
protect
spectrum.
consumers from, well, I want to, sorry, hold on. So I guess I want to protect consumers as much as I can, and like make sure they still have access to it, even if other companies are producing it. So like new competitors to produce it can still appear instead of having it gate kept by other companies.
Something else you could try, I don't know if you have an attorney you can speak with, but we have a organization locally called SCORE, and they offer free, it tends to be retired executives and professionals that mentor, but their mentorship usually comes at no cost, and you can sign up to meet with somebody, and maybe you can ask a retired attorney all of these questions and get your answers.
Okay.
So I think I'm gonna look up the site as we're talking. It's a national organization, so they have chapters, and I think ours is score114.org is the Orange County chapter.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see if I can drop that into chat for you. It's a good resource for Isabel, not only for you, but for anybody, any entrepreneur, because you're getting access to someone who has a lot of knowledge in the things you want to know about, and it's free. So, and they do workshops, they do a whole bunch of other stuff. It's a great resource that we have, and I always urge everybody to take advantage of it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Isabel, Anastasia, Randy? Okay, so I think we can wrap up then, Chad. Is there anything else that we should cover before we go?
No, that sounds great. Thank you, Dr.
Okay.
T, and
Okay.
everybody for attending.
Thank you, everybody, and all the best as you put together your pitches.
Thank you so much. Have an awesome day.
Thank you. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Thank you. Good to see you again, Dr. T. Take care,
You
everybody.
too, Randy. Take care.